Kedvach Shavuot we are on Samach Tes Amud Beis 69b1 on the bottom of the first column. So we had a statement by Rav Huna, which was a little bit hard to understand because he said, if a person, read you the exact quote, which was on Samach Tes Amud Aleph, he said, Ezer Yisrael Momer, who is an irreligious Jew, Zeh Mechal Shabbos B'Fer Hesia, anyone who publicly desecrates Shabbos. Okay, so the problem with that is that we only knew of two Tanaim at this point. Rameir, who said that anyone who desecrates any mitzvah is considered, we're suspect of their observance of all mitzvos, so why are we saying Shabbos? And then we had the opinion of the Rabbanan who said, until that if you desecrate one, if you don't keep one mitzvah, then we only don't trust you in that regards to that mitzvah, but it doesn't impact our belief or trust of you in regards to all other mitzvahs. So what is he saying when he said, if you don't keep Shabbos publicly, if you desecrate Shabbos publicly, then you're considered irreligious regarding all mitzvahs? Whose view is that? So we had one answer, but now we come to Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi gives a second answer. Rav Ashi Omer Hai Tanahu, that Rav Huna was following the following Tana, the Chamir Le Shabbos B'Avut Kavod Zara, who treats Shabbos desecration just like idolatry. Okay, so let's see this brisa. We're going to unpack this brisa, and then by the end we'll see what Rav Ashi means. The Tana is taught in a brisa in regards to bringing karbanos. Mikem, a person among you is allowed to offer karbanos, sacrifices. Lo kulchem, but not all of you. Who's not allowed to bring a sacrifice? Prat lemumar, an irreligious Jew is not allowed to bring an offering. Mikem, this limitation is only for you, for Jews. V'chem chilakti, among you, among Jews, have differentiated lo bu'umos, but not among the other nations. In other words, a non-Jew, whether they are an observer of the 7 Noahide laws or not, we still allow them to bring karbanos. Okay, min ha-behema, from the animals. Okay, so the Gemara, the Brisa says, what does it mean? Lahavi b'nei adam hadom lebehema, to include people who act in the ways of an animal. No matter what they do, even if they don't have any restrictions, they act like an animal, they're still able to bring a karban. So, and the Brisa continues, Mikan amru mekablim karbanos b'poshe Yisrael, we accept offerings from Jewish sinners, kadesh yachs b'tshuva, even though they sin, even though they quote unquote act like animals, we allow them to bring karbanos so that they will do tshuva. It will cause them, you bring them back to the Beis HaMikdash, they come there, they bring offerings, we don't push them away. This will ensure that they ultimately, this will help bring them back to God. Okay, chutz, with one exception, irreligious Jew, someone who makes libations of wine to idols, or someone who desecrates Shabbos publicly. That's the end of the brisa. And now Rav Ashi is going to analyze the brisa. Hagufa kasha. First of all, the brisa itself, there's the following difficulty. Amras mikem lo kulchem lo tisamumar. The brisa said you could bring karbanos from everyone, but not all of you, excluding an irreligious Jew. The next line says we accept karbanos from Jewish sinners. So which one is it? Do we not accept karbanos from Jewish sinners, or do we yes accept karbanos from Jewish sinners? So halakasha. Rav Ashi says that's not a problem. Reisha b'mumar l'chala turukula. The beginning of the brisa deals with a person who rejects the entirety of the Torah. That's someone who we do not accept karbanos from. And then b'mitzias b'mumar l'davar achad. And in the middle line, a poshe Yisrael, a sinner, and that's someone who doesn't keep parts of the Torah. Okay, so again, someone who rejects the entirety of the Torah, we do not accept karbanos from them. Someone who rejects only parts of the Torah, doesn't observe parts of the Torah, we accept a karban from them. Okay, that addresses the first contradiction. Second contradiction, ema seifa chutz min ha-mumar v'nasech yain, with the exception of an irreligious Jew or someone who makes libations of wine to an idol. Hi mumar hechidami. So when the brisa said at the end, it said, but we don't accept karbanos from someone who is a mumar, an irreligious Jew, and someone who makes libations of wine, and someone who doesn't keep Shabbos. The Gemara asks, this irreligious Jew, what's included? Torah, if it's someone who rejects the entirety of the Torah, haina reisha. We already said in the first line. Ilu davar echad, if we're talking about someone who is a mummer, someone who is irreligious Jew regarding one thing, kash mitziyas, the middle line already told us that we do accept karbanos from such a person. Elalav hachi kamar, and this is what we're getting at. This is what the brisa really means. This is the way to read it. The final line says, so again, the opening line says, if someone rejects the entirety of the Torah, we don't accept their karbanos. If someone rejects part of the Torah, we do accept their karbanos. However, there's an exception to that rule. Chutz min ha-mumar l'nasech u'lechal Shabbos b'Fer Hesia, except for someone who is irreligious, in that they either serve idols or they desecrate Shabbos publicly. Alma v'odazar v'Shabbos ki adanin, who from here this we see that idolatry and desecration of Shabbos are equivalent to one another in regard to offerings. Shema mina, we see from there that this is the case, and therefore we can understand Rav Huna when he said that someone doesn't keep Shabbos publicly, someone desecrates Shabbos publicly is considered an irreligious Jew. The reason they singled out Shabbos is because Shabbos is like, at least according to one Tana, is exactly like avodah zarah in the sense that someone who desecrates Shabbos publicly is on par with someone who serves idols, and that is equivalent to not keeping the entirety of the Torah. Now, as we spoke about yesterday, there are some limitations on this whole idea, and that is, first of all, someone who is, we call it something called the Tinok Shenishba, someone who is educated, who does not have the proper education. We also spoke about what exactly is included for Hesia. If someone who is embarrassed to do so in front of, even if they would do it in front of their friends, but they wouldn't do it in front of a rabbi, or even like the chief rabbi, that would already not be called for Hesia. Explicit, public means really, truly, fully public. Okay, let's begin the Mishnah on Samach Tes Amud Beis. a lot of this is going to be reviewed to a lot of the concepts we spoke about, the concept of relinquishing their rights. Let's review the idea of relinquishing rights. Relinquishing rights means that I'm able to go ahead and give up my ownership of either a house or a courtyard in order to kind of remove me from this courtyard, and sometimes removing me from the courtyard will enable the other people in the courtyard who already made an Eruv together to be able to be joined together. So, with that in mind, Anshe Chatzar, the people of the Chatzar, Eruv, one of them forgot, did not participate in the Eruv. So, Beiso Asram L'Hachnas L'Hotzi. Okay, so his house is not connected with everyone else's. So you certainly can't go out from his house into the courtyard or from the courtyard into his house, because the courtyard is one reality of connection between everyone else except for him, and vice versa. Lo v'lahem, right, for both he can't go in and out of his house, meaning he can't carry in and out of his house, and they can't carry in and out of his house. V'shalahem mutarim lo v'lahem. Their houses are permitted to him and to them. Okay, meaning they are allowed to take things from their house and bring it to the courtyard and vice versa, and so is he allowed to take things from their house and bring it to the courtyard and vice versa. Now, there's obviously something missing from this brisa because it never mentioned anything about relinquishing rights. The Gemara is going to tell us there was a relinquishing of rights over here, and we'll see that more explicitly in the Gemara. So again, the opening line, now that we know a little bit foreshadowing what the Gemara is going to tell us, is we're talking about a case where, I'll give you myself an example. I show up on Shabbos and I forgot to join the Eruv, okay? So, what happens is, five of us have a courtyard. You guys all made an Eruv, and I wasn't there before Shabbos began, so you didn't know to ask, you didn't take any bread from me because I wasn't there. And then I show up on Shabbos like, oh my gosh, you just messed it all up because one person's not joined together. Now it's no longer a unified place, and therefore you won't be able to carry. So what happens? So I'm allowed to relinquish my rights to you, and what happens then is that I'm not allowed to take things from my house into the courtyard and vice versa. And similarly, you're not allowed to take things from my house to the courtyard, but all of us are allowed to take things from your homes, the other four of you, from your homes into the courtyard, because it's all one entity. And me, I'm no longer there. I have relinquished my rights to all of you. Okay. Nasnu lo reshusan. If they ceded their rights in the chatzar to him, hu mutter v'hein asurin, then he is permitted and they're restricted. So what's that case? That case is the case where, let's just give an example. I am using crutches. Okay, I'm using crutches, so I need to carry something from my home to the courtyard. So you guys all feel bad for me. So what do? You say, in the first case was I relinquish my rights to you. The same case, I come in the middle of Shabbos. We're not part of the same Eruv. This case, you relinquish all your rights. All of you, the four of you, relinquish your rights to me. So now it's all my courtyard. You guys can't do any carrying, right? But I'm allowed to take things from my home into the courtyard. From the courtyard into my home now, I can use my crutches. Fantastic, right? In that case, though, interestingly, I'm the only one who's allowed to do any carrying, right? Which is a bit of a seeming contradiction between the first case, where even me, who was not part of the Eruv in the first case, I'm allowed to take things in and out of your house. Over here, only person allowed to go in and out of my house is me. We'll have to come back to why that is. Hayushnaim. If there are two residents who forgot to participate in the Eruv, Ostrim zeh al zeh. So let's say all of you now relinquish your rights to me and to my friend Bob, who also forgot to be part of the Eruv, is not part of the Eruv. So if all of you relinquish your rights to us, it doesn't help. Why doesn't it help? Let's think about it. Because what is the idea of relinquishing rights? Relinquishing rights means that you guys are no longer there. Okay, so let's say there's five of us in the courtyard. Three of you relinquish rights to me and to Bob. So now three of you pretend you're not there because you relinquished your rights. So now me and Bob own this place, but we didn't make an Eruv. So if there's two people in a courtyard and we never made an Eruv, guess what? Can't carry. So it doesn't work, okay? Let's come back to even why the Mishnah had to say it. It's so obvious. Because one resident is allowed to give rights and receive rights, okay? Which also we have to come back and understand, we know that. Why is the Mishnah repeating that? Where we know that one person is allowed to give rights and receive rights. We said in the beginning of the Mishnah. Why is that being repeated? Two people are allowed to give rishus. If me and Bob want to go and relinquish our rights to all of you, the three of you that are left, that works. But if you do it to the two of us, it doesn't help anything. Okay, fine. We'll come back to all that in the Gemara. When does the ceding of rights, when does the relinquishing of rights take place? Beis Shammai says it has to happen before Shabbos begins. So according to Beis Shammai, the case of ceding rights is let's say at 3 o'clock, the boy goes around and collects the Eruv from all the members of the courtyard, and then 2 minutes before Shabbos, I pull up my car, I come screeching into the house, and you guys are like, wait, you're not part of the Eruv, and I don't have enough time to get my stuff and say, I relinquish my rights. That would work according to Beis Shammai. But if I came in already on Shabbos, let's say I walked in from far away and I come in, it's an hour into Shabbos, it would not work. Beis Hillel says even after it's dark, it would still work. Let's say a person ceded their rights. Let's say I go ahead, I relinquish my rights, I say, I'm relinquishing my rights, and then I go and take objects out of my house a minute later. Okay? So whether I did it on purpose or by mistake, how is that oser? I've now restricted the courtyard back. I basically taken back my rights. These words are Meir, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, b'mezid oser, only if a person did it on purpose. B'shogin oser, if I did it unintentionally, it does not restrict. Why not? What's going on over here? So the way we explained this a few days ago, because this Mishnah was quoted, the way the Gemara ultimately landed was that really the idea is that if I do it deliberately, then then even though I said I'm relinquishing my rights, if I go ahead and carry things outside of my house a minute later or 2 hours later, before you all use that courtyard, clearly I've retracted my statement. And I've clearly retracted my statement. But that's only if it's done on purpose. So Rabbi Yehuda makes a lot of sense. If I do it on purpose, then it's a retraction. Why does Rameir say even by mistake? So the Gemara explained earlier, the Rameir was concerned if we say no by mistake, if we say it does not retract by mistake, we're going to mix it up with the case of on purpose. Okay, says the Gemara, Beisa Huda Asar, the person's home is forbidden, HaChatzera Sharia, but the person's courtyard is permitted. Right? In other words, the Gemara says, right, the first case was the case where I relinquished my rights to all of you, which says that you can't go into my house, but we could all use the courtyard. Or all of you could use the courtyard. What's the case? If I did bittul based on my asr, then why is my house restricted? Why does the Mishnah say that you guys can't come into my house? And of course, you have to let you into my house. If I let you into my house, why can't you carry things out of my house? Why not? If I did bittul, if I was mevatel my rishus, if I relinquished my rights, I relinquished my rights to the court, all my rights in the courtyard, both the courtyard and my house. If I did not relinquish, if I did not do any relinquishing in the Mishnah, then why is the courtyard allowed to be used? That shouldn't be allowed either. So where I did relinquish the rights to my courtyard, but I did not relinquish the rights to my house. Because the run and hold, a person relinquishes the rights to their courtyard, based on lo bitel. Rishus based on lo bitel, they do not relinquish the rights to their home. Because a person could live in a house without having the rights to a courtyard. What this means is that the case in the Mishnah was a case where I said I'm relinquishing my rights, and we say, okay, you relinquish your rights to the courtyard, but we don't assume that I also went ahead and relinquished my rights to my house. So basically what's happening on Shabbos is I'm saying the courtyard is all yours, guys, but I'm keeping the rights to my house. And therefore, since I'm keeping the rights to my house, so now we therefore have a courtyard, which I'm not part of, and therefore all of you, the four of you who made an Eruv, you're all connected as one, but the house I've kept, I've maintained, because I want to hold on to my house, even a house that doesn't have a courtyard, right? It's a bit more fine. That's the Gemara's point. That a person would live in a house even without a courtyard. Think about, I don't know, Brooklyn. People have houses without courtyards. Back in the day, it's a little more novel because back in the day, their houses were tiny and they would do a lot of things in the courtyard. But nonetheless, the Chazal say that a person would be okay with having a house without a courtyard, and therefore I could relinquish the rights to the courtyard, but hold on to the rights of my house. Okay, next line of the Mishnah said, my taima, the Mishnah said that their house is in the first case, when I relinquish my rights to you, then I'm allowed to take things in and out of your house. If you let me, I'm allowed to take things, I want to borrow a book, sure, go borrow the book, I can take it out of your house, and we did it in the courtyard. What's the reason? Because I'm considered to be your guest. What that means is that if you're my guest, then I don't have to make an error for you. You are my guest, so the error that I made is for you, and therefore we consider this one guy compared to those five guys to be the guest. Ask the Gemara, but what about the next case? Nasnu lo reshusan hu motzvein asurin. In the opposite case, if all of you four of you go ahead and give your rights to me, then the Mishnah says only I'm able to go ahead and bring things in and out of my house into the courtyard and back and forth, but all of you cannot do so. Why not? Why can't? Why are you guys all not considered to be my guests? The Gemara says no. One person can be considered the guest of five people. That makes sense. But five people cannot be the guest of one person. In other words, no one's going to have five guests. Again, keep in mind, different world. People, tiny houses, people not having five guests. Nowadays, maybe we would reconsider this, but the bottom line is that with all four of you or five of you go ahead and relinquish your rights to me, then we can't say, oh, you're my guest, and that's where I let it take things in and out. It's just not normal to have that many guests, and therefore, no. Ask the Gemara, fine. So the Gemara says, the fact that the Gemara at this point assumes that case number one and case number two are actually the same case. Meaning case number one, I come late on Shabbos, right? According to Beis Hillel, it's on Shabbos. I come late, I say, oh, I'm so sorry guys, I forgot to the Eruv. Okay, I'm mevatel my rishus, so now all you guys carry. And then in the middle of Shabbos, I trip and I need crutches or whatever, whatever it is, and so you guys say, oh, no problem. So you guys are mevatel rishus to me. And the same Shabbos. So what does that mean? This seems to say that we're allowed to relinquish and then return and relinquish back in different directions. That I relinquish to you, then you relinquish back to me, all in the same Shabbos. We saw earlier that this was machlokes. The Gemara says no. The Mishnah means in a second case, if originally, meaning case number one was I did it to you, case number two was the five of you did it to me. Fine, it's a second case, not all the same case. Mishnah continues. Gemara continues discussing the Gemara. The Gemara continues discussing the Mishnah. The Mishnah said if there were two to not make an Eruv, they restricted one another. If all of you, you receded your rights to me and Bob, who did not make the Eruv, it doesn't help. Pshita, it's obvious. So Gemara says, what happened is that all of you gave the rights to me and Bob, and then I say, oh, Bob, listen, we can't carry. I'm going to give you all the rights to you. That should work. Manatim would have thought Lishtri should be permitted. Kamashman doesn't work. Why did you come to be in the batil? Since at the time that the rest of you gave over your rights to both of us, nothing actually happened. There's no permission given over. In other words, if all of you go ahead and give your rights to both of us, the two of us together, there's no permission that took place, and therefore nothing. There's nothing. So therefore, I can't say, oh, you gave rights to both of us. I'm going to give my rights now to you. It doesn't work because the first step that you took was meaningless step, and therefore it doesn't work. What's only going to work is if all of us, 5 of us, go ahead and give it all to Bob, that would work. But the fact that you did all to 2 of us first, and then I go and give it to him, that doesn't work. That's what the Gemara was coming to teach us. Okay, next line of the Mishnah, She'echa nos reshus, and the Mishnah then said, and again, we pointed out when we read the Mishnah, it's a little bit extraneous. It says, because an individual is allowed to give up rights and receive rights. Hasu lamali, why do I have to say that? Inos and Tnina. If it tells us that one person allowed to give up his rights, we already learned in the Mishnah. Ino tel Tnina. If it teaches that one person allowed to receive rights, we already learned this also. Say, no, we need it for the end. Shnaim nos reshus. The 2 people are allowed to give up rights. And Gemara says, Hanami Pshita. Of course, 2 people give up rights. Why would 2 people not be able to give up rights? And me and Bob want to give all our rights to all of you. Of course it would work. Mount Tema, I would have thought, we're at the top of Ayin Amud Aleph, Ligzar, I should make a decree, Dilma Asla Vatulele, because I might confuse it. In other words, you, the majority, can't give it to me and Bob. That wouldn't work. Me and Bob are allowed to give it to all of you. So the Gemara says, I might confuse those cases and say, in as much as Bob and I could go ahead and be mevatel, our rishus could relinquish our rights to all of you. Similarly, you could relinquish all your rights to us, and we make that confusion. Kamash Mishnah says, no, we don't make such a decree. We're not afraid you're going to confuse the cases. Have a good night. Have a great week.